Hello and welcome to NCSS, and this time we're going to focus on illustrated biographies. Starting off with William Still and his Freedom Stories, The Father of the Underground Railroad from Peachtree Press, and by the wonderful Don Tate. I hope you have all of his picture book biographies because they are pretty amazing and wonderful. You may remember his poet one that he did with Peachtree as well, about George Moses Horton, John Roy Lynch for Erdman's, just so many wonderful ones. But this one is especially fabulous because it goes into a story of somebody we really don't often hear about, but we will now because thanks to Don Tate. William Still was somebody who collected the stories of people who traveled the Underground Railroad, and this was a very intentional thing. He wanted to help people connect, and he was responsible for reuniting so many families, and his trajectory and how he came to do what he did is amazing. And here is a special treat. The end papers are his actual stories, taken from his own handwriting. So it's an amazing story, beautifully told, written and illustrated by Don Tate, and just inspiring and amazing. So, William Still and his Freedom Stories won several awards as well. Next up, we have Without Separation, Prejudice, Segregation in the Case of Roberto Alvarez. So this is by Larry Dane Bridmer, who does so many amazing books on history and lots of different social studies topics. And this is being published by Cajun Creek. So this is the story of Roberto Alvarez, and he was the plaintiff in the very first successful lawsuit about school segregation. So this happened in California, and it's his story and how they decided to combat this. And the illustrations are just incredibly beautiful. So there you have that. Maya Gonzalez did the illustrations. So the other thing that I really want to focus on here is the back matter. I know I always talk about back matter, but it just is so important. So we have this author's note, and I love the photography. So anytime you can include the photographs of the actual people, I think it just makes it even more powerful and immediate too. So we've got all this beautiful photography, and then we also have a lot of great information on the sources, which is important when you're teaching historiography to kids. So this is Without Separation from Cajun Creek, Prejudice, Segregation, and the Case of Roberto Alvarez. Next up, I have a book from Little Brown, The Fearless Flights of Hazel Ying Lee. So this is somebody else I'd never heard of, but Hazel Ying Lee was the first Chinese-American woman who flew military missions for the U.S., and this was during World War II. She became a WASP. So this is not something for those who are faint of heart at a time when there was all the pilots possible were being used in the service. It was amazing to have these women who could fly these missions. And this is her story and all the things that she accomplished. She died tragically during a collision when they were rerouting some planes. And after she passed away, the military did not want to grant her an honored burial. They just were going to put her in the Chinese cemetery, and the family fought for her to have the appropriate recognition of her contributions, and they won. But I think the illustrations are just amazing. And this is by Julie Young, who did Paper Sun, if you remember that book, which was one that won lots of awards. And also this is a debut illustrator, who I think it's always exciting to see new talent. And I think you'll agree with me that Julie Kwan has just done an amazing job. So this is The Fearless Flights of Hazel Ying Lee from Little Brown. Next up, Niños. So this is Poems for the Lost Children of Chile. This one takes place, I'm following this chronologically, I hope you notice that. So this takes place in 1973, and actually in the time following that. There was a coup, a military coup in Chile, and during that time more than 3,000 people disappeared. And of those 3,000 people, there were several children. 34 children were no longer heard from. And this is a remembrance and an honoring of their lives, and also a little bit of a reverie on what those lives might have become had they been allowed to live. So it's powerful, it's eloquent, extremely moving, and again shines a light on a piece of history that we don't often talk about here in the United States, but just incredible. So hope you can see that. It's published by Erdman's. Next up, I have something a little bit more lighthearted. This is the story of the Cayman, and this is based on a true story. In fact, Maria Eugenia Manique is the author of this, and originally it was published in Venezuela, and the illustrator is Ramon Paris. But she is one of the children depicted in the story. So this is the story of a man who finds a baby alligator and adopts it, and it becomes part of the community. So you're thinking, nah, this isn't really true, but it is. It is, and it's just, I mean, look at this. He's sleeping. Ah, there we go. He's sleeping with his baby alligator. It seems like it is fraught with peril, but no, not really. And look at the children riding on the alligator. This is a true story. It's just an amazing story about community and kindness and baby alligators, which are things you probably never thought would be in the same sentence, right? This is published by Amazon Crossing Kids, which is their imprint where they're dedicated to bringing books from other parts of the world to the United States. So excited to have that one here. And lastly, I have A Plan for the People, Nelson Mandela's Hope for His Nation. This is published by Erdmans, and this is a picture book biography of Nelson Mandela, who certainly is one of the most important figures of the last century, especially when you're talking about peace, fighting for social justice and for peace. So this is his life story from the time he's a young man up through his time in prison, and then coming out of prison and leading the country out of apartheid. So it's so easy to think of people being bitter and wanting revenge, but he rose above that, and because of him, the country was able to come together and move forward as a people, and it just really made it a much more peaceful transition than it could have been. So this is A Plan for the People, and the thing that I think the illustrations by Charlie Palmer in this are just absolutely stunning. So let me show you a few, just because they are just so darn good. I mean, look at that voting. So beautiful. Doesn't that just make you smile? Such a kind man. Amazing. I actually ran into him in an elevator once. It was amazing. So this is A Plan for the People, and great back matter. What else do I need to say? Context about apartheid, which is hard for us to understand, but then again not. And then lots of information about further reading and all the things you would hope to have, and a really, really detailed timeline. So that is A Plan for the People. Thanks for joining me for this conversation about illustrated biographies, and I hope you'll check in on our other video book talks from NCSS.